Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee's Building and Finance Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, and the time is 5:05 p.m. We are meeting here in person at Leslie O. Johnson, at the Gloucester High School Library located at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road. Effective August 16th, 2023, the public is welcome to attend in person. Alternatively, the public may attend through the Zoom link listed on the agenda. Meeting notice will reflect if the meeting is Zoom only. As the recent amendments to the open meeting law allows, the subcommittee may continue to hold meetings remotely. Please note the in-person meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the remote connection. I'm just going to start by saying we do not have any attendees on Zoom, and let's start with introductions on that side of the table.
Good evening, Stephanie Frontier, Finance Director.
Ben Lummis, Superintendent.
Melissa Prince, School Committee.
Kathy Clancy, School Committee.
Bill Melvin, School Committee.
Thank you. We are all here tonight. Our CFO, Gary, is unable to join us at this time, and we have Stephanie here, which we appreciate very mumuch. First order of business, reports and deliberations and discussions. Where would you like to start?
Great. So we can start with we'll just go through the CFO's report, which Stephanie out we'll do together. I was putting it up here, and it'll follow the agenda.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to give you an update on electric buses. And special education tuition out of district update, or monthly update on special education tuition out of district costs. FY25 budget update, so sort of year to date on the FY25 budget, and then some budget transfers.
Okay.
So not too heavy agenda today, but so some of the usual suspects here in terms of how we roll. First thing, so electric buses. I'll give you an update on things. Let me just sort of capture it first, which is about 10 days ago. Yeah. September 9th, we had a meeting with Highland Electric, and they gave us at that point a draft contract, and including costs. And so I'm going to give and I'll give you an update on sort of what that means and sort of where we are, because that's sort of the beginning step here. Let me go to here. It talks about timelines here a little bit. So as folks will remember, we worked with Highland Electric to get a very significant federal grant that allows us to purchase 6 electric buses and actually replace, gives us the opportunity, I should say, potentially or possibly replace 6 buses that we own, 6 diesel buses. This is really a services agreement. And Highland essentially takes care of all the upfront costs for a whole number of things, purchasing the buses, creating and building the bus depot, managing the software and the charging capability, providing electricity, and then also maintaining the vehicles, maintaining the and they do that, and then what they arrange with us is a services contract where we pay an annual fee per bus, for all of that over time. So we're sort of allocating; they are allocating those costs themselves over the typically the 10-year contract for them. Okay, so we got the draft contract, like I said, 10 days ago. We met once with them. We met twice internally about that, and I want to sort of give you update on that and where we are with it. This is a timeline, so important, a few important time moments here. The most important one really being November 29th. That is the time by which, if we choose, the school committee and city council choose to go forward with this, that we would, that's the deadline we're aiming for. One of the things we need to talk to Highland about is some flexibility on that, because, and I'll talk more about the process in a little bit, for school committee to really consider this opportunity carefully and thoroughly, and then also for city council to do their due diligence in terms of, and their approval has to come because of the length of the contract. Okay, it's going to be quite difficult at this point to have all that done by the November 29th deadline. to be, clear with folks. The part of the delay we faced is that Highland took more than 2 months from sharing their original draft of the contract. They gave us like sort of what the contract looks like, but then took about 2 months to get us the pricing, okay? And part of the reason for that is they were waiting for news from the state and also National Grid on possible grants. As they, and we work with them and they get more grants, that obviously lowers the cost, the annual cost to us, basically. So, but that took about 2 months. And so part of the question here is just timelining and whether or not we hit that deadline, but then I'll talk also about this implementation deadline as well, which is May 2026. At this point, again, and this is, I'm sort of just giving you what the timeline could be because we're far from agreeing to anything. Is we'd be aiming to have EV buses in operation in first quarter of 2026, so January, February 2026. At this point, the deadline for the EPA grant that Highland and Gloucester received is that buses rolling by May 2026. So in this time frame, we do that. But again, I'm getting way ahead of folks in terms of timeline because there are a bunch of questions for us to answer. And here's a bunch. Here's the most important ones that we're working through. So the team that's working through this from the city and schools is both the sustainability coordinator and sustainability office, legal counsel Suzanne Egan, procurement with Stacey Capone. Also DPW is involved as well because in terms of the transformer, any work at O'Malley would have to happen in terms of electrifying. They need to be involved, and so I want to say JD Connor, who's their product manager. I think I have his last name right. And then myself and Gary.
Recording in progress.
And then Lori Francis as well. All right.
Okay.
Turn off your volume.
Okay, good, almost.
Got it, right, great.
Sorry.
So you'll see that these questions come sort of, also Connor McCorkle as well, the city CFO. So you'll see these questions sort of like, run the gamut from all different perspectives, basically, okay? One, procurement. So what is the proper process for procuring this type of long-term services contract? Suzanne Egan is communicating with the Inspector General's office with Stacey Capone because does this have to be bid? Okay, or is there an exception, through Sourcewell and Power Options, which are two, state-approved processes, where it doesn't have to go through the typical bidding process, or for the size of this contract, which is substantial, it does have to go. Which process do we have to follow to make sure that we're adhering to state procurement laws, basically? Unclear to us from inside, so looking to the state to give us some guidance to help on that. Okay. There, depending on what they tell us, there's some options there, but we need to get answers on that before we can go further. Annual cost. So annual cost, there are different grants that may or may not be included at this point. And so in their contract, in the draft contract, Highland said, this is the cost. And if we secure this additional grant, it'll be one cost. If we secure this additional grant, it'll be a lower cost. Okay, so that's not finalized yet, and there's a big difference between those two. Does that make sense? Just explaining that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess my only question is, what if you get into the contract and what if other grants become available? Do you have?
Yeah, so my understanding, and that's actually, I'll write that question down. My understanding is that you'll continue to look for those and those will continue to help us.
Yeah, okay.
But that's a great, I haven't asked that question directly for a while, and so definitely want to bring that up again.
To follow on that question as well, remember when we were first talking about this years ago, the idea of electric buses, the fact that we owned our buses.
Yeah.
No, the fact that we didn't own our buses made us ineligible for some of the things other communities may have been looking into. So so that's a question. By opting into this, does this then make other opportunities in the future that might be more attractive? Like, how do we
Oh.
know
Yeah,
if what we are doing is now is as good as we can possibly do?
yeah.
financially?
I think that's a great question, and I think that's a great question. It falls into the buckets of if not now, when, and also part of that is then what other opportunities are available. And just in talking to the city side, we have a sense that more opportunities will be available. We don't know that at this point, but there are, in terms of sustainability, in terms of fleet electrification, there are growing opportunities, okay? So part of that is for us to make a decision, not knowing exactly what those are, but with some confidence that this isn't our only shot. Okay, that's part, I think, that has to go into, school committee deliberations. Other questions that come up in terms of negotiating contract around service, what happens if a bus doesn't last the entire contract? Okay, if a bus fails in year 6, are we, because it's a services contract, are we obligated to keep paying that amount of money, even though that bus isn't in service anymore? That's obviously a question we need to know a very clear answer to. The answer should be no. But we have to sort that out with them. Another question, and this is sort of related to risk to some degree, is what happens if technology becomes obsolete during the contract? And us not knowing enough about either the technology or whether or not that would, you could still. I mean, say, put it this way, I'll put it in something I can understand, which is phones. My iPhone 8 is obsolete in a sense, but it still operates and operates fine or well enough, and gets me, does what I need it to do. Is that the case with the bus? Or does if the technology becomes obsolete, then we're not running it basically? So timeline. So first of all, is a timeline for finalizing the contract realistic? That November 29th deadline. And then also another piece is the timeline for 2026 Q1 launch realistic? Because, for example, if we be adding a new transformer, it has some real, power grid work to do. And we still know that there are delays in some very specific and, this type of transformer. Okay? And so we ran into some of this with East Veterans, and if we run into supply issues, material issues, supply chain issues, does that put anything in jeopardy? Okay. And then the crucial piece here are cost comparisons. So Gary has developed cost comparisons with the contract and the different options they put forward to us. He's looking at, he and I have looked at comparisons to continuing to lease diesel buses, comparisons with if we not only kept the diesel buses we own, but need to replace them in 5 years. Okay, what's the comparison to there? Okay, and then Connor McCorkle and so we did initial take on those cost comparisons, and Connor and Gary are working to make sure that really sort of sort out all the assumptions we have to, and they're accurate basically. So doing a double check on that before we share those with you. Okay, and again, this is some new information. We're close to sharing cost comparisons with you, but not until we do a double check on it. Yeah.
Well, grants that are out there right now potentially to reduce any costs in this contract, are they state grants or federal grants?
Both and they're also in some ways private as well, because for example, one of the their tax credits, their grants, okay. Some of the funding is one of the grant options came from National Grid. So that's it's a private, grant. So they're a whole variety basically.
I asked because I know there's a national push. Originally, it was to get all school buses electric by 2027. And there's a lot of pushback on that because of the timeline, obviously. But talks at the federal level right now, where we are today on September 18, 2024, is that they want to invest billions into this cause to get all school buses electric.
Yeah.
So I get concerned because if you have that potential push from the government, are we gonna get locked into something if that gets to move forward?
Yeah.
But
And I
I
think
mean, we don't have a crystal ball, I understand that, but that's why I'm
Yeah.
just asking where the grants are coming.
Yeah, and I think, that goes back to, Kathy's question about will there be more opportunity?
Right.
And then this is not my sense, I'm relaying what the folks in the sustainability office, they've got a much better read on than I do.
Yeah.
But they express belief that more will be coming and it'll continue to come. At the same time, you're gonna make a decision without the crystal ball,
Right.
you know, so that's gonna make it hard,
Does this
obviously.
put us ahead of the game because we'll already have structures in place, or
Right,
does it put us
Yeah.
in a position where we lost out on money that we can't tap
Yeah,
into
yeah.
because of the contract?
Well, I guess my question, Ben, is a couple of things. One is, so the city's involved in this whole process mainly because it's a green initiative, so to speak, or is it, I mean,
10-year contract.
it's.
So it was really started as a city schools partnership in terms of the sustainability office and, and our transportation office working together to see if there are opportunities out there and pursue them. And really, the city's desire to pursue, interest in pursuing this type of thing, also other solar and other options. And so that was part of the impetus. Gemma Wilkinson, she was there, and the sustainability office really had the sort of staff power to pursue it and to help us pursue it. We wouldn't be able to put together and follow up on, and work with Highland the way we had on our own, basically. So, yeah. And then the other piece that's just in terms of the sort of the approval process, the city council needs to be involved in terms of tenure plan. Yeah. And then sorry.
I would
other
also
questions? Yeah.
think, because the city has its position, that is the perspective of the sustainability. What's, what this is versus what we're currently doing.
Yeah.
That they're more the experts,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah.
that-
Oh, yes.
Council more there?
No, the office of
Yeah.
sustainability,
Yeah.
where, we're exploring an opportunity, but they are kind of the advisors.
On those pieces, yeah, we're advised on how much we need and then what the routes are and, how, and therefore, what sort of use the buses will get, and also on the cost, obviously, but no, and I mean, it is a really real team effort, I can't tell you a thing about a transformer, but DPW can. And then obviously with the legal and the contract stuff, and procurement, that's Stacy and Suzanne, so no, it really, this is not something we could pull off on our own. So let me just say, so the questions lead to next steps, and these will, these fit together. So city legal and procurement staff are working with the state and the IG to determine the proper procurement process. City legal staff, myself and also CFO, we're continuing to work on negotiating a contract and address some of the questions we raised about contract length, bus replacement, technology, and that will also help us finalize the annual cost and timeline for launch. As I mentioned, Connor McCorkle and Gary Frisch are working to finalize the cost comparisons. As I said, we're comparing electric versus leasing diesel. So remember, we used to lease all our diesel, but all the diesel buses. Now we have a combination of leasing and purchasing the used buses. Those are sort of three options that we need to compare all of them over 10 years, basically, to see, what the annual cost is and what the total cost is. And we'll share those with you, of course, share all those with you. Then once we get all those things sorted and all the information, and have a contract to really show you, we will. And then the school committee will consider the contract, cost comparisons, the value of leasing 6 electric buses. What I mean by that is, it's very likely there'll be some additional costs for going this way, okay? And then it's important for the school committee to weigh whatever that additional cost is that value of having electric buses, either from a leadership standpoint or a lack of pollution standpoint or whatever standpoint you care about, is that enough of a value to make up for any additional costs, okay? Of course, the closer the costs are, to a wash or even a savings, the easier that it is to make. But that's ultimately what I mean by the value of leasing 6 electric buses.
So Ben, you said this is obviously a team effort with the city council.
Yeah.
Does that mean the team effort includes costs?
Well, it's a great question, and we don't know the
No,
answer.
honestly,
Yeah,
they're in
no,
this conversation,
Yeah.
I mean, because they may feel one way versus us, and as far as the position,
Yeah.
whether to take on additional costs
Yeah, sure.
for that value of saving the environment or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how much of a team we really are.
We don't know that yet, and probably because we don't know what the cost is, right?
Right.
What I have been saying, and this should be as close to what our usual cost would be, because remember,
Right,
our bus costs almost always come out of our general fund, okay? There've been a couple of, with the purchased diesel buses, the last 2 years, the city, through, work with them, have taken on the annual payment of those buses for, the preceding this year and last year. But those were one through ARPA and one through, I think, stabilization. Okay, so they're not in our, but what I've been saying from the beginning is, and I still believe that the vast majority of this has got to come out of our general fund. And there, from my standpoint, it's got to be pretty darn close to what the expected cost would be for either leasing all of our buses like we used to, or the combination of lease and purchase. So, and there's a difference there. So it's likely to be, then we have to work together, schools, we got to work to get work and then decide, and also, work with cities, to see, how we're making a difference.
I guess I'm just concerned 5 years from now, where this lands. And knowing the struggles of our budgeting process now, and the cuts that we had to take this year, what does that mean 5 years from now?
Yeah.
As the city talks about more expenses coming and next year being a more difficult year than this one was, so. I look more long-term than the immediate gratification, because I think it's immediate gratification that gets us to sign contracts. So I know me personally to vote on this, I would want to know more long-term commitment by the city as a whole.
Yeah.
To make this sustainable and not put cuts in our budget because we now can't hire teachers because we can't afford the electric bus bill. So I would just need to feel comfortable in that collaboration. And I'm not saying it's not there, I just would want.
Because the fact of the matter is, I mean, we talk about contractual obligations, okay, and that's, labor agreements or special education, requirements. And this would be another one,
Right,
and we have to get the kids to school. That's something we cannot ever not pay for. So I hear you when you talk, will this force a choice down the road between this and other important expenses, and it's ultimately, school buses will always take a priority. I mean, they have to. I mean, it's whatever. So I hear you on that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on much, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I am involved in energy solutions, like from a 10,000-foot view of companies that provide that type of infrastructure. And I think the technology is really the driver. Like, how is that going to play out? Is electric buses the right answer for areas like where we live? And I'm still not 100% convinced that they are. So it's going to be interesting to see. The government obviously wants to support electric buses. Whether it ends up being the right technology, I think it's still up in the air. So.
And I'll jump on your weather word, because I've heard that there's problems with electric in cold.
yes.
Yeah.
It's cold.
So I think part of it's the education process of learning
Fires.
about.
Fires is a problem with fires too, if there is one.
Yeah, no, just on a couple things on this is we're actually, I mean, the issue with electric vehicles, any kind of range. And in the cold, the range goes down a lot more than that. I know what's experienced in my own car, to be honest, okay, or whatever that's worth. But I will say that what the electric buses don't fit for are athletic, trips or field trips to Boston or beyond, okay? And then they won't be used for that. It actually, because, and also it wouldn't work for a rural district, okay?
Right.
In terms of our runs here, it does fit quite well, even in the cold, okay? But that's not a reason to do it. It just, that's, part of the information about, in some ways it does fit. That doesn't mean whether it's the right technology or the technology changes, but in terms of the way electric operates, we're actually a good candidate in this way, because we're traveling very small distances. Well, that also can mean that our buses can last longer, whether they're electric or diesel. So anyway, just to say that.
So based on that, we would never have 100% electric fleet because we go on athletic trips that are longer than the bus can provide.
Um,
You're looking at a hybrid situation in Gloucester regardless, unless the
For what-
technology gets better. to
yeah,
last
yeah, for
longer.
what I know now, okay,
Okay.
but that, we'll be changing that sort of stuff. And I would say, like, I don't know the exact range of the buses. I do know for around town, it works, around the city, it works very well. I can't tell you if Beverly and back is probably fine. I don't know that's specific,
Right.
but, that's really, and for all I know, maybe Boston and back is fine
And
too.
we'll have those answers before we vote on this. Is that?
Yeah, we can find out more about what the anticipated range and sort of thing is and how it varies in terms of, whether, toll really, yeah, definitely. So, and then I said, my understanding at this point, school committee, supports electric buses and city council is approving a long-term contract. I don't believe they have, and that means then that it would, also obviously get into the costs and that sort of stuff and look at those closely. So that's all we have on the update. And so what you expect next is, depending on timeline, let me ask the question to the committee. Our next, being that until October 25th. We'll have answers before, we should have a lot of answers before that. Maybe at that point, I talk to either Melissa or Kathy or about just process from here. We could bring it to the full committee, but I'm not sure if you want to do that first.
So my suggestion is we do,
Yeah, okay.
right?
Straight-
We meet on
straight-
October 9th. I might not, I don't think I'm here that night, but I think because if we're expected to make this decision within 30 days and there's so much knowledge that's not known.
Yeah.
I don't know that this will be a quick conversation, a quick approval, just because we do it. And I think bringing the full school committee along the process and the more information that gets to all of us on this topic
Okay.
is better if we
Great.
have to make a decision in 30 days. If the timeline changes, that could be different, but we're sitting here not knowing much. The city still has a lot of questions and you're telling us we have to make a decision in 30 days.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
No,
for
yeah,
a 10-year contract.
that's why
I mean, we have to get on board. Do we support electric buses as a whole to begin with? Is that the direction we want to go? I know we have 6 buses already. Dip your toe in it, try it out, but
Right.
this is a big commitment. And I just want to make sure that we have at least a majority of the school committee that believes in this commitment, knowing potential issues that could
Yeah.
come up along the way.
And I want to be just real clear, like, I don't think of this as a slam dunk at all. Okay, like,
Right.
crystal clear, like, and also, if the school committee, my feeling here is if the school committee needs more time. And there's a deadline we can't hit because we're not comfortable with the information or the answers we have, that's the deadline we can't hit.
Yeah.
Okay, we might have to explain it to folks, but that's okay, I can do that, we can do that. So just so you know where I'm coming from,
Yeah.
we need to have a good thorough vetting, and process, so you folks are comfortable with whatever decision you make.
So at our
That makes
meeting
sense.
next week, we'll give an update on this, and if you have any updates from that update, I would say feel free to give them as we're discussing it, so that everyone's moving at the same pace
Okay,
here instead of
I
waiting,
can add some more detail on that, yeah, okay, yeah.
because that's how I feel anyway. I don't know what the rest of the committee.
No, I completely agree because we have questions, you have, you've given some answers. They'll have other questions, or at least, I think the idea of bringing them along, given the the deadline's really short. And,
Yeah.
my question will be from the city, I'd like to know from every stakeholder on the city side,
Exactly.
what are their concerns? Before we take any vote on it, right? Like, don't just hand it to us without, yes, it's good for the environment, but,
Yeah, no.
you know,
it's much more
right.
than that.
what's the agreement in terms of cost over time and how that fits, as the cost is big and what if things vary and what if there's unexpected costs, who picks up those? There's with the current situation of our buses, there's been generally predictability with the exception of cost of fuel.
Right, yeah,
Right?
And you have 9 city council members that are gonna wanna weigh in on this as well, right? So if we're not confident, I feel like it won't pass. I want this to be a joint effort with, in my opinion, the way I see this working out, joint effort. City council is supporting us,
Right.
not just because we want it, but because they believe that this is the right path for Gloucester as well. Because I see this being a joint effort in both cost, funding and sustainability for the city as a whole.
Yeah, joint. With
It's a joint
with the
effort.
The sustainability office of the city
Exactly,
would need to come forward with their recommendation, not just us.
right.
It's easy to, I think
I'm not
it's,
sold on this by any means, so I don't know.
I
Do
think
we
it's
have a
easy.
sustainability commission? Their commission, their
No, I think it's just the
Just
department.
department.
Yeah,
New
yeah.
position, yeah. But we met her, she was here.
She's not.
Great.
Oh, she's gone.
Yeah, I think to be with her. Yeah, you know,
I think it's easy to get behind electric buses nowadays. It's kind of like. Electric, yeah, but I'm certainly not sold on it.
I believe in a healthy balance. I think you need all
We'll see.
kinds of power sources. But one doesn't work, the other one will.
All right, thank you for the questions and, seeking clarification, and we'll have it on the, obviously be on the next agenda because of the report from the subcommittee. But, if I have any more information to add, I will, and then we'll have the full committee, which I think is the night. Great.
Thank you.
Stephanie will take, from here. Do a monthly update here.
Okay, so our monthly update we have for special education out of district tuition. For 2025, our tuition budget was $5.5 million. Public placement and private placement tuition budget was voted for $550,000. We anticipated growth in new placements and move-ins for the budget for $550,000, and our FY24 special education tuition contingency budget was $400,000 to get us up to the $7 million. On the next slide here, there is a breakout again of all of the approved budgets. You can see so far for our September estimate for the tuition, we are currently at $5.7 million. We have available just shy of $267,000. We're anticipating some new growth, but we're waiting on the final placement, so we currently do not have that information. We still have the $400,000 available for the special education contingency. So you can see the ending balance where forecasting is $1,216,916 currently. I do want to mention there are still 8 students waiting on a new or a change in their current placements. We do not have that information. Sometimes takes a little bit longer to get that.
Steph, are those students at a placement now and they're looking to be replaced with a different place? Or are they in the public schools now and waiting to be placed?
That is a good question.
I can,
Go
both,
ahead.
Both.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some students who are, in district,
Yeah,
and maybe out of district, or some folks who maybe a change in placement, in this case, obviously a more restricted placement is how they term it, which, mean a higher need, basically. And those are known students right now, but there could potentially also be more.
Right.
Okay, so that's known right now. We'll keep updating you on that number as it changes in the upcoming months.
So is it the district's position as of today, we do not have any new students that we have identified to need special education out of district?
So some students may be in process continuing from last year.
Right.
So,
I'm talking about move-ins.
I don't know of any move-ins yet,
Okay.
but I don't know of any, I've not heard of any move-ins yet,
Okay.
but I haven't actually had that question. We'll report that next time as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But just in terms of waiting and change, this is typically at this point, because 11 days in, these are folks who are already in process as a continuation from last year on a possible change in placement or a new placement. Interesting, yeah, and we'll get back to you on the movements as well.
and just because I'm not thinking clearly tonight, but of those 8 students, let's say 4 of them are in the district right now.
Mhm.
When they get placed, that's gonna change the. That's gonna start changing the tuition estimated.
Yeah, September estimate, right, yeah, exactly right, yep, yep. And you know, and as we explained last year, and maybe we'll do this again this year, just as a refresher, is, you know, there are times where a student has, because they progressed, has a less restrictive, you know, needs fewer services, you know, or another version is registration goes down, sort of stuff. So there can be fluctuations up and down on that. Typically, I mean, it always, you guys have seen, you know, on balance is going up, okay? But, you know, over the last 2 years, it went up so much that it outstripped the appropriated budget. We are really working hard to make that not happen this year.
Related,
Mhm.
students get placements or, you know, whatever number of this that's currently here and then goes out of
Yeah.
district. That means there's other staff available, correct? That have been supporting those students in.
Possibly, it really depends, it really just depends on.
Maybe.
It could. You know, it's not a,
Not a one-to-one, I understand.
yeah,
But-
no, in that case, it very well might, that's probably the most likely situation. No, that's the situation that's most likely to free up a staff member.
Yeah.
Okay, but, you know, in our programs, we should be staffed in a way where it's not completely one-to-one, so it could, yeah.
Do we have a time frame, if any? When we may receive a report, like 100-day from this new director of special education, Donna's thoughts? I know it's gonna take probably more than 100 days, but I'm just curious.
Nothing set yet, but I do, I've been thinking about this, you know, and I
Yeah.
mentioned before, so nothing yet, you know, one of the complexities that comes up now, and we're just working on this today, was, you know, Dr. Jarvis, Mike getting a good sense of the macro, what are the big picture, you know, just where are we big picture, okay? At the same time, now the school's underway, also really having to deal with some micro, some of the,
Right.
you know, small, or not smaller, but, you know, close in urgent work as well. And that, of course, as for any of us as school leaders, makes it hard to do the macro, you know? So, anyway, I'm trying to be patient, but I'm being patient with him. He needs to be patient with himself. Everyone needs to be patient with him as he gets on board here. Let me talk. I'd like for him to do that. At the same time, I want him to be able to present information where he's knowledgeable enough at it. You know, that's a hard part, which undermines folks and leaders in lots of ways if they go too early and feel like they're making grand conclusions, which don't resonate with the folks who are in the schools and the classrooms. Like that's just damaging, honestly, you know. So want to be patient. So when he does come forward to give you guys some impressions and some sense of how things are, we're well thought out, well informed, that sort of thing. So.
And not necessarily solutions, but what does he see? Share with us what you see, and is there potential anywhere, knowing there's lots of work to be done to even get to a resolution, right?
Yeah. And then just that really needs to jive well with what's happening in the schools. Otherwise, like I said, it's actually,
Exactly.
yeah,
No, I
people
agree.
feel like they're, it's
Yeah,
damaging. So,
no pressure, just
Yeah.
curious.
Yep.
Okay.
So now I will provide an FY25 budget update. So the gate contract is not settled for FY24 and FY25. The GTA contract is not settled for FY25. The school committee contingency budget still remains in place, which is a good thing. Health insurance is paid monthly, so when I show you the next slide, you're gonna see a healthy unencumbered balance, and that's because we do not do encumbrances on a yearly basis for health insurance. The unemployment claims could increase. Currently, we have 5 staff members that are on unemployment that we're paying for, which is roughly a liability of $70,000. We budgeted $192,000 for unemployment, so that could increase possibly. Our supplies still have a healthy balance in the accounts, and as supplies are needed for our students, the funding is encumbered. We will, and we're gonna be providing a quarterly update on the available budget going forward. So this next slide shows you broken out by school, the original budget that was voted, where we've expended year to date, what we currently have encumbered, so POs in hand, and what we have available, meaning unreserved.
Are there any questions on that?
Any questions on this particular slide?
Is that a lot of money to have unreserved? Is that a concern? I should say.
It is not. We're in a good position financially. If we over encumber, what happens is, that's typically larger blanket POs, and then they sit there for money that we could have used for other purposes or other needs district-wide. So we're in a great situation at this point in time for September.
Thank you.
The next slide shows some more of our departments. So the account that I was referring to before is the benefits account. So you're gonna see $6.4 million. Don't be alarmed, that's mostly, we do not encumber any of our deductions and benefits for our employees upfront. So that's what that is so far. You can see though, we have expended 1.3 million. I think we've paid the GIC for the last 3 months. So that's what it reflects. That's what's reflected there.
And this update includes any potential settlement with contracts. For example, last year, we did not settle with GAPE last year, so we're carrying that money somewhere, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yes,
Is that considered encumbered? Or is that under the available? In other words, did we earmark it?
It's somewhere in the city, right?
Thinking. I don't think it's earmarked specifically, but we have a allowance for it in the budget.
So it's been encumbered somewhere, it's been spoken for.
I don't know if the operational pieces of encumbered or
Okay.
not. Okay, I know we worked with the city to make sure we had that money available to us.
So that money is not showing in available, I guess is my question.
It should not be, because
It
it's
should not
fiscal
be.
24.
it is not,
Right.
it's a prior fiscal year.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's preserved.
And we did ask that question of the city to make
Mhm.
sure the money that was in our budget last year at least is available to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stephanie, does the 192 for unemployment, does that, where does that come out? Is that
So
benefits?
that's
or-
also out of, give me 1 second, under benefits.
That's what I thought.
So that's, in the, yeah, that's already in there.
And do you remember, or do you know off the top of your head what the percentage in health insurance increase we,
That's a good question,
Mark, for
Melissa.
this year?
I can recall off the top of my head, but we can get back to you on that.
yeah, it's no rush, we still have till March before it happens, I was just curious. If we had any forecasts.
So you for FY25, what the increase was?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
going forward, in other words. We know what fiscal year 25 is,
Oh, so you're
so
quite.
we're not budgeting for next year, that's for later, that's
Okay,
next budget.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
Now we're gonna move on to the budget transfers. So our first budget transfer here is increasing our technology professional service line by $9,840 and decreasing our facilities maintenance phone. What this charge was for is it was actually for Partners Technology for an annual maintenance fee. And this year we rolled that into one of the contracts that the IT department did. So we're just moving it from one department into another so that we can pay an invoice. The next budget transfer I have for the board is an increase in the technology instructional professional services of $37,529.49. And it's decreasing the infrastructure. And that is to move technology professional services from instructional to infrastructure so that we can pay what this was cloud storage license, so we can report it correctly on our year-end report. The next transfer I have in front of you is to increase the preschool cleaning professional technical service line by 28,500 and decrease the preschool salaries. This was within the revolving account. This is to pay for our allocated cleaning expenses contract for the preschool. And the last transfer I have in front of you is for the district office cleaning, to increase that by 9,500 and to decrease the rental equipment to cover the cleaning service. So the district office pays a portion of the preschool cleaning in that building since it is a leased building.
We used to only have the owner do some cleaning at the end of the night, which amounted to emptying trash and cleaning bathrooms. When I got here, that's the only one when I got here, we then used ARPA and ESSER and other dollars for, because at that point we realized that it wasn't being cleaned properly, it wasn't well enough, particularly in the COVID world. And so that at that point we contracted out with being a leased building to do daily have janitorial service basically. So that's part of that. That's what these expenses are.
That the other things that are not done normally
Like vacuuming,
by the
like,
landlord.
right. Other cleaning things like vacuuming or
Daily incidents.
daily incidents, mopping,
unusual like that.
all sorts of things that were not being done on a regular basis and which I learned when I got here. People got happy about, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I think that,
Are there any questions on any of these transfers?
I move that we approve the budget transfers as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? It's been moved to second to recommend to the full committee to approve. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, vote carries. Excellent.
that's the agenda is complete.
Wow. There a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the vote carries. We'll end this meeting. We have no attendees.
Nobody?
Nobody, not one.
I'm still having to get over here.
You all got your books?
Yes. Did you bring them?
No, I